Hello and welcome to the Uprising Show. And today I have a very special guest with me, my friend, my brother, Sagar Patel. Welcome to the show, Sagar.
Vivek, it's always a pleasure and privilege spending time with you, buddy.
And Sagar, for everyone listening, I want you to give your introduction in your own words.
Absolutely. My name is Sagar Ashok Patel. I'm the founder and CEO of OceanCom Advisory Group, and we provide support and guidance as well as consulting for healthcare and healthcare tech startups and small businesses, ranging anywhere from a million to 25 million in sales. And
Great.
my background, I think, we'll get into that in a minute. But another thing I always like to mention is I am very proud to be an American, but also I'm very proud of my Indian heritage. So, I always like to share that as well.
Great. So let's start with that itself. So, Sagar, I know you outside of this pod beforehand. So I know that you are the first one in your family who was born in America. And I also know you that you are one of the you know person who have very strong work ethics and unending energy to work hard. So your father and mother immigrated from India, started their life here. Would you credit these qualities to them or and your upbringing?
Absolutely. No question about it. I mean, to me, there's a few things that built like the foundation for me. Number one, it starts it for me, my parents. I've been really lucky to be born to them. They were both the youngest of six each. Well, my father's the one that came to America by himself, and they instilled that work ethic in me. And then also the other things that they like introduced me to and exposed me to, like going to the temple, right? Growing up, with a Hindu background. We sometimes forget, but those types of things do take a big part in like setting the foundation of how do you balance, wanting to win, but then wanting to win the right way, right? And then also another random thing people don't know about also is martial arts. I was put into martial arts at a young age, so I did it for 5 years. No, not very people know this, and so I did that from
Yeah.
like second grade to like seventh grade, and that really also taught me a lot of just like discipline, focus, and like being, very focused on hard work and determination and courage and having that moral compass when it comes to business.
Nice. Nice. And what was it? What specifically was it? What kind of martial arts was it?
It's called Kempo, and it's Japanese, style, and it's actually like it's more focused on self defense, and always the goal is always to avoid fighting and all that stuff. Which I wish I took that advice in my younger days. but that's basically the basis of it is if you do get in a situation, how do you defend yourself and get out of
Great. They say like the strongest offense is getting the defense right.
it?
So-
Never.
so- yeah. So I'm always curious how people end up where they do. So could you please share how you ended up in healthcare?
Sure. So I don't know what it is. I've always had this passion for wanting to help patients. And as you know, with being Indian, it's like your parents are always pushing you back in our generation to be a doctor, right? If not an engineer or something. And so when I was in school, ironically, I never liked gore. If I get cut, it doesn't bother me. I'll stitch it up. But if you get cut or somebody else, I get queasy. And so I could never like in lab like cut up a frog and all that stuff. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out to be a doctor, but I always wanted to be in the medical field. And then when I went to college, my dad's one deal with me was, hey, I'll support you till you're 21, and I don't want you to work and not be focused on school because he didn't have that opportunity himself. But I had to major either to be a doctor, an engineer, or computer science, and so that's why I chose bioengineering. But I chose bioengineering because of two reasons. One, UCSD at the time was number two in the nation, and I've always been very competitive playing sports. And then second is I always knew I wanted to do business and healthcare. So I'm like, if I'm going to do engineering, I might as well do it related to healthcare. That was my ignorant 18-year-old thought at that time.
And then what was your first job in healthcare?
Yeah. So then when I graduated, it's funny. College doesn't really prepare you for the real world. It's all a scam almost. They're just trying to convince you to go into master's and just keep studying and paying tuition. And so we get out of college, I'm like, well, there are jobs for bioengineers. And the reality is, I had to learn through other older friends and mentors that no, no, no. In medical devices, there's R&D engineers, manufacturing engineers, and quality engineers. And so my first job was for Boston Scientific as a manufacturing engineer.
Nice.
And
And
yeah, man,
then
it's
from
crazy. So what we would do is we'd have to bunny up and go in the clean room and then manage all the little processes to manufacture thousands and thousands of catheters. Or for me, it was a cochlear implant, auditory device for deaf children primarily, and we oversee all the assembly workers on the lines that are doing one thing and passing it down. So very very interesting.
interesting, I had the privilege to spend few years in Germany, and I had my time going to this all manufacturing plants in Germany, and
Mm-hmm.
to monitor their belts for quality, and that all those kaizen and all that processes, how they seriously follow. They show you with the beep, they will show how things move on the belt and when it stops. So it reminded me of giving me a flashback of my time there in factories in Germany. That's funny. Um, so like you have spent decades in healthcare world, and one question that I always get, especially for people outside of healthcare, and they ask like, is go to market strategies in the world of healthcare, is it different from other industries? What's your take on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be crossover, right? But the reason why I believe healthcare is so different, especially in the U.S., and why the U.S. market is so unique, is number one, um, it's very fragmented, right? The industry, and it's there's always chaos, which is opportunity. But I mean, even look at just the market in trying to implement Obamacare years ago and trying to create this universal way of doing healthcare, it's super difficult because it's so cumbersome, it's fragmented. And then, not to mention, we have 50 states and there's so many different regulations across state to state. So, for folks that think it's complicated in Europe, having all those different countries, imagine you come to the States and in healthcare, you could have different rules and regulations depending on the state as well, or different nuances with insurance, involved in running the show a lot of times. So, yeah, absolutely. It's very different in that sense, and it's highly regulated. There's HIPAA involved, right? So that's why, in my humble opinion, why it's taken healthcare so much more time to embrace tech than if you think about like finance and banking. Think about how long ago we started using ATM cards, right? And how much more digital forward banking and finance is compared to healthcare. So yeah, I do believe it's quite different.
So two things here, right? One is anybody new who's trying to get into healthcare, any pointers there from your side for them?
Oh, for folks that want to get into healthcare, number one is please join. We need all the help we can get. It's such a huge market. It's recession proof, in my humble opinion. And really, like, I think it starts with people. Anything in business, I really believe like people's the most important thing. And so if you're a good person, you've got strong, you have IQ, you also have EQ and have interpersonal skills, and then also, you have good character, you will succeed. And then just find the right mentors or people that you can work with that'll coach you through it. But to me, 50% is that. The other 50%, is the function of learning healthcare, right? But that part you can learn. I mean, I'll give you an example. In medical device sales, which I eventually went into from engineering, we were hiring top salespeople of other industries and then spending 1 to 3 months training them on spine surgery and brain surgery. Now they're in the operating room. So we would be there with the spine surgeon on the table doing surgery with their entire staff. And we're outside the sterile field verbally guiding the surgeon how to use your product. So anybody can join. If you have the right work ethic and you were willing to learn, there's so much opportunity in healthcare, in my opinion.
And would you still say like it is still one of those industries still catching up with other industries in terms of tech?
Absolutely, man. I mean, just the other day I went to the doctor and we're still writing, we're still doing paper, like handwritten like forms. I don't get it for my annual physical. I've been here 5 years in a row, same practice. Why is this not digital yet? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the way I always think is like, I don't know, maybe I live a little bit in a bubble, right? I always feel like, wow, there's some cool things happening tech wise and all the thing is happening in the way. but it's always a reality check where you go. I do give credit to the UPMC health system here, very tech forward, beautiful app, and to the level that I actually check in on the app when I go in the hospital, and this is rare, right? I never went to hospitals in New York for primary care, but here
Mhm.
these in cities like tier two cities, the hospitals are the one who's doing a lot of PCP and physician primary care. So it's always interesting, but I really think that at least UPMC very sweet in everything they've built, like great experience.
You want to know a fun fact about UPMC?
Uh
Um,
huh.
that was our, if not our number one of our top centers of excellence for Carl Storrs endoscopy. So I went from Boston Scientific to then Storrs, and I took a national role to actually run, like manage a sales team. It was a player coach role of 6 reps, and then also manage the P&L from a marketing perspective. So it was almost like running a little mini startup within a $1 billion company. The only reason people don't know about Carl Storrs is they're privately owned by the Storrs
Right.
family in Germany. And so that's why it's not public stock like Stryker. But we competed against Stryker, and we had the best endoscopes, best quality video towers. And then we actually started doing OR integration at that time. This is like in 2009 is when I joined the Storrs company. And UPMC was always leading and cutting edge and utilized all of our products and tools. So I'm not surprised that UPMC is still leading the way. They've always been like that center of excellence from so many different levels in terms of implementing technology and constantly being in the front end of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it surprised me in a good way. Let's say that
Yeah,
very few time you find it, but they've done a good job. So now speaking of your startup career, and you have a track record of driving revenue growth for multiple healthcare startups and leading them to significant evaluations and valuations. So, could you share some of the key strategies that have been most effective in scaling these companies? Feel free to name them or without naming them, up to
yeah,
you.
sure. No. So I think it's important that even like my experience at Carl Storrs, though it wasn't a startup, that really began my sales leadership kind of experience and foundation. And so I share that because we had to take that. I basically took over a brand new service line, the spine surgery portfolio of products that they were selling in Germany and other countries, and launching it for the US market. I was also super young. I was in my late 20s, and I got very lucky and connected through the USC community to even get that interview. And then the rest is history. But that role taught me how to launch something from a different country into the US market because the nuances are so different. So, in their mind, I'll give you an example. The German go to market, there, the dynamic between engineers and doctors is very different. Engineers are actually very well respected, and when they teach a doctor, the doctor listens. Here in the U.S. market, physicians are running the show and are the ones where the reps are like, "Oh, please, doctor so and so, will you use this product? Will you trial this, et cetera, et cetera." So just understanding that dynamic was different. That you couldn't just drop a study and say, "Hey, look at the study now use it." It's a very different like EQ that you have to have. And then secondly, once you understand the user here, we had to remarket our products, rechange the positioning, right, the marketing, and how we approach each of the different markets. And then also I learned that every market is different. The Northeast is very different than the customers in Florida, for instance, or people in Texas or Southern California, where I'm at currently, or the Northwest, like the Bay Area, and then the Midwest. And then like even within that, there's sub markets. If you have to understand like what drives them to make a decision. And so from a go-to-market perspective, that really helped me understand like how you create nuances versus trying to do this one size fits all, strategy. Now, in some instances, which later I worked at a company, called Patient Pot, there was more of a one size fits all ish because it was SaaS, it was a smaller deal size, and we weren't selling multi-million dollar, you know, products to hospitals, right? Like med device, we were actually selling a subscription, to doctors' offices and small doctors' offices, and so that ended up being a little bit more of that high transactional, just high velocity sales, and so that go to market is going to be a little bit different. Then fast forward when I was at Honor, and it was again a completely different model, partnering with local home care agency owners and doing multi-million dollar deals and engagements again in a very complex, almost like an M&A revenue share model. And so that again has a completely different go-to-market strategy. And oftentimes people want to just like kind of jump onto buzzwords and apply just, oh, we need to create a repeatable, scalable sales model. Sure, we know that, but if everybody knew that, then we would only have 1% of startups succeeding, right? The hard part is figuring
Yeah.
out how do you create that sales motion for that specific scenario. And so what we had to do in Honor was, hey, the SDRs that we were using in SaaS does not apply for that scenario. We had to completely create a whole new job role function and look for different skill sets to do the lead generation. And so these are kind of different go-to-market strategies depending on what type of product you're selling and services you're providing within healthcare. But that's always, I think, I found very fascinating is that I've had the privilege of working in almost every like subsector of healthcare, and so doing that, it humbles you and makes you realize like every scenario is unique, and you have to like figure out what's that custom, solution that you can pull from other experiences, but how do you create a custom solution for that particular instance from a go-to-market?
From from this perspective, right? Like it's getting very difficult for. It was always difficult in healthcare to reach for marketeers to reach to their target audience, and now it's gotten even worse.
Yeah,
And the money is not that cheap, so everybody wants to do it more efficiently without spending dollars. And what is that? What is that takes in sales today to get through, get your foot inside the door and get in connect with your prospects, especially in this world?
yeah. So that's a great question, and actually, you and I had experience working together on this very specific challenge, right? The other problem is the customers we're dealing with in the healthcare and health tech vertical, they're not always professional buyers, right? So they don't even know how to purchase this. When you're doing B2B, like I worked at IBM when I switched to tech for 2 years, and my peers who were, I was in the healthcare vertical, but my peers who were working with, let's say, finance, banking, or other vertical industries where they know, oh, this is a sales process and this is how you go through that enterprise sales process. They understand that that's what it takes to create a transaction, right? A lot of times these physicians, they're not trained in business, so they don't understand like how to even purchase something like that. And that becomes the number one challenge. And so that I think is a big key understanding of like, okay, how do you understand your customer? Because that's where it begins. And then number two, how do you get through the gatekeepers? They have such a different style gatekeeper, especially in these practices, right? In hospitals, they're paid to not let you in. Their job is to make sure the physicians are focused on patient care, which they should be, but they're not also trained or at that level, right, of business acumen to realize, oh, once in a blue moon, if something interesting comes, I may want to bring this to so and so's attention, and they might actually get credit for it because normally they're getting, in trouble for distracting them. And so, how do you get past the gatekeeper? How do you educate, right, the end users on what they need for their practice, which they may not even know? And so, I think those are the key factors. And the greatest example is us two. We're at Clara trying to get things off the ground from zero to a few million that first year. We had to get creative in how we get through to the customer and educate them and get them enticed to even take a meeting. But that's the challenge. These are not professional buyers of what we are typically selling or product and service selling. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did go out of to try the other world, right? I did become, VP of marketing for this company, enterprise software, global solution, right? And clients were Salesforce, AT&T, big companies, right? In Europe and America. And I tell you, I did like really big initiatives there, like even like the rebrand and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
completely changing company name, repositioning, starting a subcategory. But I felt it was way, way, way easier than healthcare. It felt like it's easier to build all this buzz, like you talk about in marketing world, like build communities. It was way easier. Like I built a community around it, and much easier. And those people are like people on desk jobs, like it's different. So way different in that side of the world. So it certainly is a beast, like in healthcare. And I always say, and I've been saying this from the very beginning. I think there are two things that I say. One is like from investor side, I think you have to have a heart, like to understand in healthcare, like you can't have the same margins in home care versus you're doing SaaS. So
Yeah,
if you are an investor who comes from here, you're the wrong investor, right? Like
yeah,
clearly you're not going to be helpful because home care margins are not there. And also, if you think there is like this layer in healthcare, like you start with there's tech solutions, there's like Medicaid related solution, then there are private practice solution, and then there are home care solutions. So
yeah,
there is, and
yeah,
all have different margins, right?
yeah,
So I think that's there one thing. And second thing, I feel like in healthcare, especially sales and in marketing, uh, I think it's much closer. The teams have to work really together if you need to get to the conversations with your buyers. Otherwise, any others, you can still do your own siloed things and it might still work. But here, the game is like really how you orchestrate together.
I couldn't
And
agree with you.
that's,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I just want to hear your thought on the second point.
What's that?
I want to hear your thoughts on the second
Yeah,
point.
no, I can't agree with you more. And actually, shout out to you being one of the best partners I've had in terms of like a sales and marketing partnership. And that's why, to me, I see it as growth. In healthcare, you have to look at it as growth as a total solution where you have your sales arm and then you have the marketing arm that's supporting the sales team, not this marketing versus sales. It's got to be like hand in hand and realizing like, hey, the goal is to generate revenue and grow the business. And how are we going to support each other? Right. And then you have your revenue operations, you have, the branding team supporting it. But again, the goal that I've seen in healthcare, and I can't speak for other industries, is that it's usually sales driven and you have to look at it as a growth team where all the other functions are supporting the sales team to get from point A to point B and generate revenue. And yeah, you have to really be one unit. I can't agree with you more on that. And I've seen companies fail because of that, because they're all working in silos. And now with
Yeah,
technology, it's getting worse. People don't realize that, like, yes, tech is great for efficiency, but to innovate, you have to have this human interaction. Like, think about how many times we were hit with a problem or a challenge getting into like a large practice, and we would just be in the office late hours just whiteboarding and like collaborating, and we may not know what solution we're trying to build or what the end result of this meeting is going to be, but we knew what the challenge was, and all of us had different perspective, and the goal is to bring all of our 360 expertise together to formulate a solution and move all of us in one direction. That to me is the beauty of like collaboration, and that's what's needed, especially in healthcare where you're solving such complex problems in a fragmented market where you need also heart. You have to have heart, hustle, and humility in healthcare to succeed. It's not just like you were saying, like other industries like finance or real estate, where you're just
yeah.
it's all dollars and cents. You can't do that. It's not sustainable.
Yes. Okay. Talking about tactics, right? So, is there any one thing that you have from your memory that you were like, dude, this was a total hack and it worked? Anything, any story?
Oh man, there's so many. To me, that scrappy stuff is the fun stuff. I think that you get to test out at startups. This is why I love supporting small business and startups. I worked in all size companies, and the smaller where you roll your sleeves up, that's the fun. And so that's where all these tactics work. And one of my favorite tactics actually was tag teaming with you with the LinkedIn, right, where you have multiple people adding on LinkedIn and communicating them and building a story for them through education, and then letting them discover, oh, this is interesting. Like, I want to learn about it versus trying to tell them, hey, we're here to sell you something, right? Letting them kind of find you. I thought that was a cool tactic that we did where we have the marketing people plant the seed and then they created them to want to then speak with, the sales folks. So that's
Yeah.
one of them definitely.
I always remember this one very cheeky one in the earlier days in when early days when I was getting startups. It was like especially the US when I moved from Germany to US, and you have those email lists, right? And we were using Mailchimp, and Mailchimp has like when anybody unsubscribed from the
Mhm.
email, it used to show them the list name, and so I intentionally thought about this step, like, hey, I'm going to do this email blast to physicians,
Yeah.
and they're not going to like it, and they're going to hit unsubscribe. And then I intentionally named the list as top physicians of America, and I literally got responses back from a couple of people saying that, hey, that was a mistake. I want to be in this list. Can you put me back?
Yes.
I don't want to unsubscribe. So I was like, wow, like it's just a funny story because there's a like people weren't thinking completely. I've seen like lists, and you will see like outreach list. That's what people were putting, and I was like, this is so a missed opportunity. I always thought like, oh, and then it got when I got the result, I was like, you know what, this is really works. You need to think through the all entire touch points, right? Like that's how you do it. And I also had a group on LinkedIn, which you were saying, which I think I still have it, Top Doctors of America, and it still has 300 physicians in it on LinkedIn.
Wow.
So it's fun. I like it in that way, but I also started to see now that there's a lot of physicians around LinkedIn. I actually get these outreach, either whosoever is doing for them, like a dentist, you want a dental appointment on LinkedIn to me. Or there is like a direct primary care physician who's doing this, which is, I appreciate the effort. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But you know now how the tables are turning, like
Yeah.
physicians are moving towards like this is the market, everybody's on LinkedIn now trying to use that as a channel.
It's
So
true.
have you seen something, what's your take on this? Have you seen physicians going in this direction,
Yeah,
taking
I mean,
social
and
media?
also remember the demographic is getting older, right? So now the younger audience of physicians, like my brother-in-law, like a lot of my friends, like half my friends are physicians or married to physicians, and they're on LinkedIn, they're on Instagram and other social media channels. So yeah, I absolutely see that, and that's part of the reason why our tactics are always going to evolve, right? Like tactics that worked in the early 2000s or then 2010 and whatever, they're going to have to continue to evolve because the world isn't static, it's dynamic, it's constantly changing. And so we have to keep adjusting our tactics. But the beauty is when you have all these cool tactics we've used in the past, those experiences is what helps us to then formulate new ones to test out. But you have to have the guts to test those out. So I like that.
Yeah.
I like the ones you were telling me about. That's funny. And
Yeah.
actually, another one that I use that you just kind of remind me of is that now, see, I do believe that you have to be very self aware of yourself. And so, a tactic I may have used when I was fresh out of college versus late 20s versus like early 30s, new in management versus now, right at 40, it evolves. And so, you have to know how you present yourself to the audience and how they perceive you to use that tactic. So oftentimes, if I needed a message to come from somebody else, I would have it come from somebody else. It's not about the ego of like, oh, I want to be able to say.
Mhm.
You have to understand, like, I could say something and someone else could say something, and it might have completely two different meanings. So I think that was an important tactic I've always deployed. But as of recent, I go in and I'm very straight up nowadays, where I just keep 100, and I'm like, this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you with this. It would behoove you to not, have a conversation. And that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
my work.
yeah. I think that's how it is, right? Like this is it's interesting. Like also, I always feel like a lot of people in like in B2B world, especially or outside of healthcare, there's like always this like, let's pick this big email, tell like a story and all that. But that doesn't work in healthcare. Nobody has time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
literally, they're like on their phone in their lunch breaks or whenever
yeah,
they're checking their phones. The
yeah,
message needs to be like what you want to tell
yeah,
straight up.
yeah,
Otherwise, you forget about like you will ever
yeah,
get through, right? So
yeah,
that's one thing. Is like very much like people needs to like think in healthcare world, which is great exercise anyway for marketer or salesperson.
yeah.
So I really like that. And you have cut all the all the crap out of that and just goes through the point,
Yeah,
right?
and then
um,
again, and that might evolve too, right? But right now, the trend has been that, and that's been the thing that I think people are. It's the same thing as like LinkedIn became all about like finding, but then you look at the last 2 years, there's so much garbage now of like
yeah,
outreach happening on LinkedIn. So now that's starting to create, you know, what do you call it? People are becoming just immune to that, and they don't want to
yeah,
their inbox on LinkedIn. I sometimes have that same issue, where I miss important messages. I'm bombarded with like 15 to 20 a day.
yeah, yeah. um, So, you have provided guidance to several startups and SMB owners, especially. So, what common pitfalls should new entrepreneurs in healthcare and founders
Yeah.
especially be aware of, and how can they avoid them?
The number one biggest one I always see now is people and just hiring and hiring incorrectly. Um, I cannot emphasize this enough that 1% of startups will succeed, and maybe another 4% will get to certain levels of success, like Series B, Series C. But 95 are just they're not going to make it. And a lot of them might even be fraudulent, like they have no business doing it. But who am I to judge? Like, hey, if you're trying, great, good for you. But to get in that 1%, you have to have so many things work in your favor. And the last thing you want to do is shoot yourself in the foot. And I see this all the time, which is you have to be self-aware of knowing what type of talent can you realistically attract. And then work to get the highest level of talent that you could possibly attract, like in terms of like an A level player for that position. And then the higher that position's role is, the more important you should invest in spending extra dollars to get that A player versus being cheap, because your most expensive line item on the P&L is typically going to be your people. And so that's where you should invest your money versus trying to cut corners. So again, I see oftentimes people hiring incorrectly, and and they'll, when you're behind closed doors with your team, you're gonna think, oh, this is the best product ever. But until you get out of the market and you see if customers actually want to buy, and you go through the challenges of getting it across the table, you're not going to truly know. And so what happens is people will build this, beautiful Excel sheet and say, hey, if we hire 3 headcount in this, then it'll equal X amount of sales. Like, it doesn't work that way. If you don't hire the right people, none of it's going to work. So I think the most important, thing, and what the pitfall I see is just people hire incorrectly. And then once they hire incorrectly, they spend time, training that person or lack of. And then what ends up happening is when that person doesn't ramp up, now they either hope and pray that they somehow will turn it around. And they just keep dragging their feet until they let them go a year or two later, or they let them go, and now you're back to square one 9 months, 12 months later, and then you've lost opportunity cost, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, very valid point. And also, I think there is one thing that, right, like a few years ago, there were not many resources available. People will talk, the founder can talk to another founder, just do the same thing and it might work, but not anymore, right? It doesn't work this way. And hiring is a very expensive mistake. It's like you
yeah.
can, like, it's just waste of time and money both, right? It's like you're putting yourself 6 months behind. So one thing that has happened, and especially in last post COVID, is like a lot of experts, and then this is not just healthcare, every industry, especially go to market experts who were working for companies, they have built their own advisory groups, and all those things have happened. So I think those resources are available now, but
Mhm.
I think the founders are still lagging behind in thinking. They need to start taking advantage of these specialists in the market, and that's not happening right now. And I think that's a big problem. I think we are still playing catch up here, because they still think that, oh, in-house is maybe, yeah, they will charge me more money, and but that's like it's like a rude awakening waiting for them. It's That's how it is.
I'm actually glad you pointed that out. I couldn't agree with you more that you have to think about two things. Number one, you have to think about what is your specialty or your secret sauce and your strongest one or two or three assets, right? If you as a founder are not good at evaluating people and talent, specifically, let's say for sales or for marketing, and maybe you have never done it or built teams, then how are you going to know what good looks like? You're now forecasting, right? You're playing probabilities and you're gambling in your decision making right there, right? Also, when you hire these recruiters, within whether that's your internal recruiter as a startup, and you have to think about, okay, what's the level of talent? What am I paying these recruiters? Because you get what you pay for, right? Or you're hiring these outside firms. How do you know they can guarantee you success? Like, what is their tracker record, right? If you look for actual people who operated, and then not only are they operators, but they have a track record of very low turnover, of building teams with low turnover, then you can tell that, okay, this person actually has the skill set to help you hire. And so I truly believe in partnering. I think partnership, when done the right way, and not just the cheesy partner, but like actually like partnering with people in anything and everything I do in life is so important because there's only 24 hours in a day. I know exactly what I'm good at. I also know what I'm not. So I'm going to partner with the smartest people for what they do really well. So with real estate, I can't be an expert in healthcare tech and in sales and also be an expert in real estate. What do I do then? I make sure I find the best realtor who I trust, who I've known for years, and who's shown me a pattern that they've been so successful with all their customers. And that person now I rely on and do my investments through him. Same thing with like stocks, right? I don't have time to like be the best stock trader while I'm doing all this other stuff. So I believe in paying, right? And so why not pay a close colleague, friend of mine who's done this for his entire life and is really good at it and is an asset management company. So this is what the same thing when you're running a company as a founder, you got to figure out what you're good at, and then the things you aren't, you got to partner with the best people and pay for it. You get what you pay for because if you cut corners, you're just gonna be back at square one. And that's the part I think that they don't get is they look at everything as a cost, not an investment. You got to know the difference.
Yeah. And, with Ocean Comp, you aim to address gaps in the GTM talent for startups and small businesses. So, what inspired this focus, and how do you ensure that clients achieve sustainable growth?
Yeah, I love people. I truly like being around people. I get energy, and I pride myself on surrounding myself with not good, not great, but exceptional people, like A players in what they do. And so when I vouch for somebody, it's a big deal. I don't go around and just say, "Oh yeah, I refer this, refer that." That's my word, my reputation, our company on the line. And so this is why I truly enjoy seeing people succeed, whether it's on our team or if we place somebody somewhere. I love when I introduce a good friend or ex colleague of mine to another person, and they become business partners. And after a while, people are like, "Man, every time you introduce me to somebody, they're always second to none. They're amazing people." That's what I find enjoyment, and I get energy out of that. So that's the reason why I do what I do when it comes to the people piece. And I think that I also have a different method to my madness. I'm not sitting there doing what everybody else does. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to like recruiting firms, search firms, and they all sound like the same robots, asking the same questions, doing the same old thing. And again, you have to look at yourself. If you apply the same best practices format as everybody else, then how are you going to be number one? Right? Maybe 80%, 90% you should follow best practices. But 10 to 20% of what you do, you've got to figure out what you're gonna do differently to put you at the very top. And that's what we've done in every single place that I've worked at or that I've partnered with, and what we do in our businesses. We have to always make a bet that we know or we've cracked that code to figure out what's going to work in this scenario. And so, same thing when it comes to people. That to me, a business starts and ends with their people, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. Is that I think if you get the people right, you will succeed. Right? If you get not good, not great, but exceptional people at the table, they will figure it out. Even if it's an okay product, they'll fix it. And I've seen people who are not exceptional mess up a really good product or a service. So that's why I'm passionate about it and how I help my customers, right, my partners, address this.
And and how do you plan to expand this impact in on these companies in healthcare and tech sectors? And this is more like looking ahead. Tell
Yeah,
me, think of your major goals for the next few years, both
yeah,
I guess personally and professionally.
sure. So the thing that I really, I don't want to say pivoted, but adjusted about a year and a half ago was being extremely intentional about who we work with. So it's important to work with quality over quantity of customers. And I would much rather do a really phenomenal job with people that are coachable, right? And we all have to be coachable. I pride myself in being coachable every single day, in all aspects of life. And so people who are coachable and actually want to learn and put in the work. Number two, people with high character, that they put the business above their selfish needs. That's not easy. You have to be wired that way and be more of a giver than a taker. And that's where you have that abundance mindset type of people versus scarcity, and they look at things as an investment, not a cost. And then number three, people that are also enjoyable to work with. Man, time is the currency. And I've dealt with a lot of, a-holes in the New York markets, in Southern California, in the Bay. I can do it. I just don't want to anymore. Like, and so I'd rather help good people, and that's where I've been very intentional about building a new book of business of people within my network or people that I trust who vouch for other kind, amazing people who I may not know. So that's number one that we've been doing is working with people intentionally. Then number two, we're building a team of folks that are way smarter than I am from all parts of the growth platform, right? Sales, marketing, branding, revenue operations, recruiting, everything, so that we can truly be an extension of a growth leadership team for our customers versus just having solo consultants come and go. We actually provide an entire group of brain power, right, for our customers. And so now these small businesses who can't afford to hire three A-level VPs can get that type of support, right, at a much more reasonable, right, economics. And then the third component is expanding to other countries, especially in places that I have either a personal connection with, like India. I speak Hindi and Gujarati, and Ahmedabad, where my hometown is, has been booming with startups. Mumbai, of course, has been. And so in these markets where I have connections, I'm now offering to reach out and see if there are creative ways of helping those companies in whatever format and then helping them succeed. And then also in Latin America, I speak Spanish. I need to get better. But now I've been invited, at a show a few weeks ago for Latam Health Tech, and there's other organizations that I'm connected with. So that's another piece, is that these types of countries that need help with growth for their health tech businesses, and all more importantly, want to maybe expand into the U.S. market, which is always most of these companies' goals. We can now make that bulletproof versus them trying to do this and not understanding the marketplace. And then finally, the final piece, kind of a spoiler alert, is that by the end of this year, I will be launching a fund that I'll be managing, because my long-term goal is to purely just angel invest, and I've been doing so, on a much smaller scale personally. But now, with having so many amazing people in my network that trust me the same way I trust them in other categories like real estate or whatever, they trust me when it comes to investing in startups within healthcare and healthcare tech sector. So now I'm going to build a fund for people that are in my circles to then invest and actually, right, be able to have opportunities to invest in it from an angel perspective. And that's something that I always wanted to do, didn't have access to. And now that I do, I want to open that up for my people. And that fund will also be part of possibly our customers. So there are customers that we end up working with, and after learning their business for 90 to 180 days, and we see that, hey, this is a great company, and not only are we helping the company, we want to invest in it. That's a great way to start with the consulting group and then invest later down the line as well. And that's what's coming in the future of what we're doing here at Ocean Point.
Fantastic. And is is are you finding it? I mean, the market is still, it's very, very, like, money is no more the way it used to be. And are you finding it difficult in a way, like the conversations are more, it's taking more time, it's just like more convincing, and there is more reservations from the side of founders? And what's your take on that? What advice would you give, especially to the founders if they're listening?
Sure, sure. I knew this coming into 2024. I was expecting this even last year, that this is going to be a weird year, and from so many different angles. Right, you have the election, you've got inflation, you've got money drying up, right? But regardless of all that, I always believe in survival of the fittest. Whether it's a bull market or bear market, if you're a winner, you're going to win. So I've just become a lot more adamant of saying no and not wasting my team or myself's time with people that are just have a scarcity mindset. And I try to explain to them, I understand that if the money's tight for all of us, but you still got to figure out then where to spend. You got to spend it wisely, and don't be penny wise, pound foolish either, though. And so now, if money's tight, that means you better get your hires correctly. You better have the right people at the table to help you build the right strategy. And then you better have the right people at the table who are going to then execute. The strategy is only a part of it. You need to have the people, the strategy, and execution. Execution is the hardest part of it. And so, and if you have a team of not good, not great, but exceptional people, who are like work ethic and just relentless like us, then you will figure out a way and succeed. If there's a pattern, if you look at people like our history. So, but that's the part is I think the founders are still hesitant and wanting things for free. And I always tell people, you get what you pay for. So if you pay somebody half of what they probably should make, then do you think that when push comes to shove and they only have 24 hours a day, they're going to spend that extra time on your business versus someone else is paying double? That's how I always think about it. Right? I always try to put myself in the shoes of the other person. That's why I don't like to shortchange people that I pay for other services. Right? If I cut somebody out and shortchange them as a GM of a hotel or like a realtor or whatever, right? Then when they have three things to do and they only have time, but they have five people asking for help, you think you're going to help the other two people that are getting it for free? No, they don't have time to. You got to first take care of the people that are paying them. And so you as a founder have to think about that, right? You get what you pay for. And I don't know, I believe that people is the most important thing to spend money on.
Yeah, that's very well put. And also, the important point is like when things are tough, you certainly want to get the right things, right? You want the right people
Yeah.
in right places, and that's very easily to forget in these situations. So that's great. Wow, it was great. And I like to end the show with kind of like a personal question. So it's like I ask everyone that tell me about a personal thing that no one in your professional circles knows about this, and this is your chance to share with them. Could be anything that you like to share. So on to you.
God, there's quite a few juicy things. I'm trying to think about what I could share. And does that have to be something that
Yeah,
you know or you don't know?
I don't have to know it, and this is your chance. Could be anything.
Okay, so this is something I hid from a lot of people, but I was a bit of a. I'm still am, deep down, but I was a bit of a daredevil. And the first, you know, ignorant purchase I made after I graduated out of college and I was an engineer was actually I bought a motorcycle. So I had a sports bike, a red Honda CBR 600 for 2 years, and I hid it from my family. My parents had no idea, or they would have disowned me. And it ended up getting like snagged in LA. And then actually, ironically, my boys, like my close friends, like all my buddies from college were the ones who made me promise that I wouldn't get another one because it's not safe out here, especially in Southern California. But yeah, man, I was a bit ignorant. I had a sports bike, and I still to this day, when I see a sports bike drive by, especially a red Honda CBR, I'm like, oh, I miss my motorcycle.
That's funny. So no one knew it in your family, and do they know now even to this
No, I
day?
mean they found out like I think when I was like moving to New York, like I just ended up telling them. I remember I was moving like when I was turning 30, I was moving to New York, and something came up, and I was like, hey, by the way, I used to have a motorcycle. My bad.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's funny. And where can people find you if they want to hit you up?
So a bunch of places. Obviously, there's our website, oceancalm.co and OCEANCALM.co, oceancalm. And then also we have a YouTube channel. So if you look it up, it's oceancom01 is our YouTube channel. We also are on LinkedIn. Oceancom01 is our LinkedIn handle. I have my personal LinkedIn as well, that you can also find a lot of information on. And then we're also on Instagram, both my personal Instagram and then Sagar Patel 01 and OceanCom 01. So, and we're going to continue to put more content out and hopefully have more folks learn about us or people from our past life, get reconnected to us. That's the goal of the content, right? If we can help even just a handful of people, then it's worth the time.
Well, you heard it, folks. How to find Sagar, and this was great. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone who will be listening to this episode from wherever they are. And if you are a founder, especially early stage tech startup and health tech, you know whom to reach out. And I'm sure Sagar will find a way to make sure you scale as fast as any of his companies has done in the past. So, thank you, Sagar. Much appreciated.
Vivek, thank you so much, brother. Miss you and I appreciate you, and I'm glad we got to do this.